Next on the news, the Holy Father renews his plea for peace, calling on Russia to end the war in Ukraine and appealing for a ceasefire in Gaza. That appeal comes on the heels of deadly chaos breaking out as humanitarian aid was being distributed in the Gaza Strip. Plus this.
Grandparents can be the foundations of faith for many young people. I'm Katie Vasquez, and coming up, I'll introduce you to one Brooklyn grandma that's keeping traditions alive.
And we visit St. Bernard of Clairvaux Church in Bergen Beach to meet Teresa Sorrentino and find out why she is the pulse of the parish. I'm Christine Persichetti. Currents News starts right now. Pope Leo XIV is once again calling for peace. The Holy Father reiterating his appeal to end the war in Ukraine and begin a ceasefire in Gaza. Pope Leo XIV's Wednesday morning general audience began in the Pope Mobile, waving through St. Peter's Square. And, of course, the traditional blessing of babies couldn't be missed. Flags practically flooded the entire Vatican. Faithful from around the world didn't want to miss the second public audience of the new pope. Pope Leo used the opportunity to call for an end to war during the last moments of his public address. He began with Ukraine. On Monday, authorities reported a Russian attack of Kyiv involving more than 350 drones. The total impact on civilian and military personnel is still unknown, but the initial reports indicate heavy injury.
In questi giorni il mio pensiero va spesso al popolo ucraino colpito da nuovi gravi attacchi contro civili e infrastrutture. Assicuro la mia vicinanza e la mia preghiera per tutte le vittime, in particolare per i bambini e le famiglie. Rinnovo con forza l'appello a fermare la guerra e a sostenere ogni iniziativa di dialogo e di pace.
Pope Leo also spoke about Gaza, where humanitarian aid still struggles to get in and attacks on civilians continue. For example, also on Monday, a school in Gaza was hit and around 20 people were killed.
Dalla striscia di Gaza si leva sempre più intenso al cielo il pianto delle mamme e dei papà che stringono a sé i corpi senza vita dei bambini e che sono continuamente costretti a spostarsi alla ricerca di un po' di cibo e di un riparo più sicuro dai bombardamenti.
The Pope called for a renewed respect for humanitarian law in Gaza and the release of all hostages who are victims of the war. The papal appeal for peace comes on the heels of deadly violence in the Gaza Strip. The chaos erupted on the first day of the delivery of U.S.-backed aid. Thousands of desperate Palestinians rushed to receive food supplies. Crowds tore down some of the fencing and appeared to climb over barriers. Palestinian health officials say one person was shot and killed and at least 9 others were wounded. Israeli troops say the situation was brought under control and operations are expected to resume at the site. Meanwhile, Wednesday marked 600 days of the Israel-Hamas war. A drone shot shows that message spelled out on a beach in Tel Aviv. Families of hostages and activist groups observed the day with protests calling for their loved ones still being held to be returned. At least 58 hostages are still being held in Gaza, with at least 20 believed to be alive. Russia and Ukraine continue to trade drone and missile strikes. Meanwhile, Germany hosted Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky on Wednesday. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz pledged to help Kyiv develop its own long-range missile systems. That military hardware would be free of any Western-imposed limitations on their use. Some of the weapon systems that were given to Ukraine during the 3-year-old war had been subject to range and target restrictions. Now to Rome, where 60,000 pilgrims are expected to take part in the Jubilee of families, children, grandparents, and the elderly. The festivities begin on Friday and run through Sunday. Closer to home, a Brooklyn grandmother is making a profound impact on her grandchildren's faith. They come together every week to pray the rosary at Good Shepherd Church, a practice that not only strengthens their bond, but also deepens their spiritual connection. Currents News' Katie Vasquez has the story from Marine Park.
You can put the flowers in front of Mary. All right, very nice. And what do we say to Mary?
For Diane Reynolds, spending time with any of her 11 grandchildren is special.
Full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women.
Especially when the conversation turns to Jesus, as the devoted grandmother wants to nurture their spiritual lives.
We learn by example, and that's something I hope to pass on to my grandchildren, that they live what they learn.
Every Tuesday afternoon, Good Shepherd Church in Marine Park is filled with prayer. As Diane and her grandchildren gather to do the rosary together with the Grandparents Club at Good Shepherd Catholic Academy. It's a tradition that deepens their connection, not just to each other, but to their faith.
Praying the rosary with them gives me a great sense of peace.
And it's helped guide her granddaughter Nora in her own spirituality.
I learn a lot from her, especially during Mass, like with the prayers. I like the Hail Marys, and I pray a lot to St. Anthony.
Pew Research shows that 79% of former Catholics left the church before the age of 23, a statistic that motivates Diane to be a steady source of faith for her family.
You have to start them young, because they do live what they learn. And even if they stray for a while, they always have that firm foundation to know that Jesus is always here and always ready to forgive.
Holy Mary, Mother of God.
The message is not lost on her grandchildren.
I am glad to know that if I need help or I'm struggling, that I have a grandma who could help me.
And Diane hopes her efforts will inspire other grandparents to take an active role in their grandchildren's spiritual growth.
We do want to be role models for our grandchildren. We want to instill good citizenship, and I think part of that is believing in something bigger than yourself.
From a pew in Brooklyn, one grandmother's legacy of faith is taking root one prayer at a time. In Marine Park, Katie Vasquez, Currents News.
Another grandma in Bergen Beach is staying connected to her faith in a different way. She runs the gift shop at St. Bernard of Clairvaux, but says this job has been a gift. Teresa Sorrentino is tonight's Pulse of the Parish. Teresa Sorrentino has been retired for years, but her day still begins the same way it always has, in church. And every day after Mass, she gets to work. The former bank manager now manages the gift shop at St. Bernard of Clairvaux Church in Bergen Beach.
When I retired from work, I worked 36 years in the bank. So when I left, it's very hard to go from one extreme to another.
So 14 years ago, the pastor at the time asked her to run the shop, something to keep her busy, keeping her connected to the community and her faith, which Teresa says has always been so important to her.
It means a lot. Gets you through a lot of things. Health-wise, family, everything.
And her faith guides her when she stocks these shelves, arranging and rearranging the items for sale. From rosary beads to bracelets to little statues, everything here has been carefully curated by Teresa. She searches for them, buys them, sometimes with her own money, and puts them on display.
I look around to buy different things. Sometimes it's not religious, maybe it's just a little thing that they might be looking for. Maybe Mother's Day, maybe a birthday, an anniversary. So I put different things in there.
And her customers love it.
Oh, look.
For Teresa, this shop, tucked in the corner of the church, has become her sanctuary, a peaceful place that gives her purpose and a retirement spent in service.
And you know, you meet a lot of people that maybe just come into church, and they're happy to meet you, and they feel that they're welcome, and they tell me that, so it makes you feel good.
Hey, Teresa, good morning.
Father, how are you?
Good, and you?
The pastor, Father John Madori, says he's counting his blessings to have a parishioner like Teresa. Not only does she keep the gift shop afloat, she's also a Eucharistic minister, counts the Sunday collection, and is a member of the Rosary Altar Society.
Very dedicated, very humble, quiet, dignified, but a very strong and powerful faith. She's just always there for anything you need her for. She's really an extraordinary woman.
And as long as she's needed here,
Okay, come again, girls.
Teresa says she'll stay.
As long as God keeps me going, I'll do it. Yeah.
And now you know Teresa Sorrentino from St. Bernard's and how she makes up the pulse of the parish. Joining us now with more about the parish of St. Bernard of Clairvaux is the pastor, Father John Madori. Father Madori, thanks for being here.
Good to be here.
So I know you haven't been at the parish that long. I think you said around 9 months, but it seems like you have a lot of parishioners like Teresa.
Yeah, it's a wonderful community. Incredibly involved in the parish, in the wider community. It's a real community-oriented place. As I mentioned to you previously, that people oftentimes call it Mayberry, because between Mill Basin and Bergen Beach, it really has a small town feel to it. The community is very strong. They support each other. They really care about each other. And you see that. You see that with the parishioners in particular. They all know each other.
I love it.
And there are a lot of different events sponsored by the parish, Knights of Columbus, that people come from all over Bergen Beach and Mill Basin for throughout the year to just celebrate their time together.
I love that. You also have a big young community, thanks in part maybe to the Catholic Academy that you have there. It's thriving. How do you keep the young people involved in the church, especially when maybe their parents don't go to Mass?
Yeah. Well, I'm revamping the entire youth ministry now. We have one at St. Bernard. We also have one at Mary Queen of Heaven, which I'll be becoming pastor of in July. But like anything else with evangelization, whether it's youth or older people, you have to go out and reach the people. Just saying we're going to have an event, they don't come, or very few come. What we have is good, but like anything else, it could always be better. So I did hire a full-time youth minister, one of the focus missionaries from Queens College. And they're trained in theology. They're also trained in reaching out into the community. So she'll be teaching our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders religion, focusing on that. She'll be running our Life Team ministry and then our Edge ministry, which is the middle school ministry of Life Team in the fall. So we'll have youth ministry going from 6th grade right up through high school. And then she'll be going out to the local Catholic high schools to meet the teenagers from the parish there and from Mary Queen of Heaven, as well as St. Bernard, to build rapport with them and invite them into the parish community. That personal invitation is so important. And she'll also be doing young adult ministry. We have a college young adult ministry going on too. So, and the two we have now working, Helene and Sister Mary Jane, they'll stay on. They have their own groups and their own service projects. So we're going to try to bring it all together. 6th grade is right through 30, reaching out to them and seeing, hopefully, we can reach them. And oftentimes you get the young people on fire for the faith, the families come back, the parents.
I love it. Great ideas. All right, this is a fairly new church, one of the newest in the diocese. I believe it was built in 1989, but the parish itself actually started in 1961, and I know the parishioners were called the tent people. Tell me about that.
I never heard that until I went there, and some people introduced themselves as the tent people, and I was like, what's that? And then they explained that the first church was literally a tent. And there's a plaque on the outside of the present church, the real church, if you will, that has dedicated to the tent people. And these are the ones who were the first people who really came to build up the faith community of St. Bernard of Clairvaux. So there for quite a few years. And then they went into the school auditorium as their church. And then finally in '89, The pastor then and the people decided they really needed an actual church structure.
And the actual church almost looks like a tent, right, with the ceiling?
The ceiling resembles the roof or the ceiling of a tent, yeah. And even the windows, they have like they symbolize water and wind, because our closeness to the water and the canals there. So yeah, it blends in perfectly with Bergen Beach and Mill Basin.
Absolutely, really beautiful church. Father John Madori, pastor of St. Bernard of Clairvaux, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
All right, before we go, do you know someone who is the pulse of their parish? Email us their story at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number 718-517-3122. That is this Currents News Update. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.